What's up, everybody? Welcome to Sleep Atomic, and this is the Andor review. Episode 12 is titled Rick's Road. I've been doing this review every other week on Sundays, and I just wanted to say it was very nice to stop and ingest this as slowly as it would have been coming out on TV like shows used to. I don't want to be like that, but I also did watch them all out when they came out, which was still every week for 12 weeks, which is nice. It's a little better presentation than when I guess the format of just dropping all the episodes out at once, which may be a hot take in itself, but that's how that is. Because if this was a friend coming over every other week on Sundays just to come and talk and watch TV with me or something, it would be a little nicer than them just staying for like a long sleepover and me not seeing them ever again. It was very nice knowing Cassian was like coming back to me even though I was just pressing play. And now that I hear about the Imperial Security Bureau, like I think about Andor. Even just seeing the stormtroopers, I was like, oh, that has to do with Cassian's part of the world. Mm, nothing about the Jedi. It almost seems like a show that came because of whoever had the rights for the stormtroopers and was wanting to have him there for something else than Darth Vader coming in like smacking him around or Luke Skywalker doing that. But again, hearing ISB and um, makes you wonder after this episode, for some reason, not at the beginning, about their whole deal. I suppose it's because they're already established from like other things, and then they came reversed it and kind of like latched it on to like a memory we had from other stuff. But it's like a vague and specific at the same time lead in to whatever else is like already in the universe. Kind of a nice story architecture if you're kind of think about all those ideas like that. It would kind of be like a new wing of a building that you didn't really go to, but you can like kind of like see it from where you go to park, or like in addition to like in part of a city that you kind of like wanted to go to but still haven't. And just for the other scales, like a new city that you've just now heard about, you want to go vacation to. I think they were doing a pretty good job for something they just created for just to assimilate into the uh, Star Wars narrative. It does not seem any newer or older than certain things on the uh, storyline in general. Sometimes you make a remake and it's vastly different and has like more money or like different effects because they're not uh, from the same time, or mainly the lingo changes or something somehow. And you can definitely like date the era it's from, even if you were to show it to like a young person that's never seen any of it. But to get into the story, it starts with the recap of the all of it just from the last episode in Daughter of Ferrix, and then we transition to what could only be a young person that everyone was or is in Ferrix at this point. maybe not even this point, but you can imagine they all like went and did something that this kid had did because of his dad, but everyone else seemed to think better of it, or at least guided it to a normal kind of looking facet. I'd like to think like Bix had that little network, and she had worked on those all those rebuilt items. It kind of says they're all like handy, but it's like, oh, okay, well, they had started at some place before, but this person's going to start somewhere, and then it won't. That frustration won't be built up into a usable skill, really. Just to be fairly vague until I get to the part uh where everything happens. So basically, this person's youth is toiling away at what you know later is a thing that starts off the push in Ferrix, where everyone else's youth was individually developing, so it didn't find a way to connect with everyone else at the same time. With everything going on, it just never really happened. Maybe two or three came up together, and then they built that little scrapyard that Bix had where they kept the radio. And in this context, the youth is most considerably people's determination. Sometimes it's like their innocence or their love for things. Whatever it is, they can't like pick the petals from or like take away from these individuals. But those are the basic three to keep it pretty simple and to keep you moving along and thinking about it. So while looking at their adversaries, it almost seems kind of sad now that the Empire was like shook so badly that they like do all these things, trying to like not look undetermined. It's like a overcompensation and overreach to never have that happen again to them. While all the while the people in the rebellion never noticed that it's something they never got taken away from them. And this is the episode where they're like, "Oh yeah, like we do this better than you." Like I knew it was something. And I was never shook, and my determinations never wavered, even though it kind of like looks different at different times. It's just now that it's like, oh well, I knew before I could only go this far, but I was only being polite, so I'm gonna go past that because apparently you don't need that. Or technically, this is me helping because you don't seem to know what's a good guiding principle. It's almost like a funny realization, like haha, but it's mainly like a funny realization, like why didn't I do this before? But the whole episode's kind of like somber, but it's like what the I guess the people with their youth still is makes people feel like, or like is what would have been like their equals or the people that they are the opposites of. I don't know what the neutral one would be, but or even but there's also the one they could rise above and past with whoever's with the empire, like would see how easier it would be like working with them. And somber is what their youth makes them feel like. Some sort of futility that really shouldn't be there, and it almost looks like from a uh, audience standpoint, it looks like they like thrive in like somber areas. The rebellion people with the youth, just like they were like charging up this whole time, and like now that everyone's the saddest they get, they rise up and push back. But really, the Empire had dropped their facade for everyone to be like, hey, wait, like, no. It sounds like the weirdest, like, RPG attack in the, whatever game it is before the epic choir music turns on. The kind of choir music sounds like they, like, are, like, singing in a church or is, like, a church group or something. But it's like not quite opera. It's like woo, ding, and like you do your ultimate attack. But it's been from all this like somber energy building up, or like being stoic for so long, trying not to like trigger like the adversaries or the opposition. But then in turn, like they think of that on you, so they think they could just like do whatever. If you at least joined me on like that mental tirade, I'd say you pretty much have a grasp of the whole final episode of this season. And then all the while on the side that's closer to the Empire with Mon Mothma, at least among these characters, at least that's not Daedra that's actually in the with the Empire. Within Mon Mothma's like super privacy, like I think that's the general goal of like how everything's set up for her. But you find out that the driver has actually been keeping tabs on her and like listening to her, but not through like her knowledge at all. It's just like a switch of the camera to show the audience. She's like aware of it because I guess she's a senator and like it's kind of like a duh. Like they keep tabs on us, but at what degree? I guess is their like real question. This whole time it was like a kind of like a looming like oh like they could be they aren't maybe like but they finally answer that question or uh plot thread that's been like having them like sneak around this whole time with between Vel and uh Lucen and his assistant. They've been giving us like obvious hints, like Vel's like Mon Mothma's like sister or cousin or something, but it's just uh functionally like we don't need to know any more than that. Like he's like, oh okay, she's family, like Vel from the Aldani heist and the leader from that. But again, like for this situation, they don't really have you like have the character deliver you the information like directly coming out of their mouth. But she's having this very vague conversation with her husband while the driver is driving him home and is supposed to not be listening, but is listening to this whole like argument about gambling and how Perrin is gambling again. But if you go back and remember like everything that's happening with the little uh, loan shark or the banker guy that Tay knows, she's at least like sending out little feelers out that's like, oh, like Perrin's the problem here. Like it wasn't her, it was uh her husband's and his gambling habit that's putting her out in a bad way. With the whole scene closing out with the driver just like, so ooh, like again, it's very unreadable expression. Listening from the driver's compartment of the little uh, vehicle that's taking him home. We're left uncertain whether or not she's actually throwing him under the bus or not, but with how he is and like the surface problem that she comes across sometimes, uh, the audience can like uh, work it to where he might actually be gambling anyway, but she also like specifically had that conversation there. But again, like if you're like being kind of neutral, it's like, oh well, she was mad, so she was like having that conversation there. And from where they left was like a little like active party. Like it was very quiet, and she like unbuttons her jacket to uh Perrin opening up the car door or the vehicle's door, and like all this loud music and what he usually envelops himself in, and him like still having a glass of whatever brown liquid is being served there, and then into the why are you still gambling on Coruscant? Like there's places you could do that, but it's like here. Wow, I like to mention her very nice earrings. Kind of looks like the little flexible thing they do for certain necklaces, but it's like a crystal on a earring, and it's like dangling from her ear. I just like a lot of the fashion choices that happen in her scenes. And Perrin's rocking a kimono, eluding looking thing. Even it's got the top knot on. But I digress. It's pretty much harping on the fact that you might not or will not get invested in it anyway, but you're like watching it, watching the show. I mean, on this what review of this season, like I've definitely like watched it because of what the characters are, not because it said Star Wars, which was the kind of like a good reason. Like I watched it the other time, but I heard good things, so I uh watched it when it premiered, and now you can like get invested in Diego Luna's like acting career and follow him around instead of Star Wars around. But back onto the key moments before like there's nothing really to discuss. We get to Cassian about in the same like um plane of thought and about to make the transition to whatever he's about to do next as the kid from the beginning, and that's like putting together that now obvious bomb to the diffuse whatever it is that he keeps thinking about and seeing when he looks at his father's like little hollow picture, and you get the little parallels like with Cassian, and he's flashing back to Clem and things that he taught him, and kind of like the lesson that he flashes back to is kind of like, oh, we just have to do the things that no one notices or wants to do that's easily done, that no one takes the time to do. And it's shown with this part that they like clean the rust off in this little bath that little Cassian's looking at, and Clem's like showing him how to make 500 credits per part. While at the present time, like Cassian's like looking at Clem's brick and thinking about the words that trigger like all these memories. Is like the man the man who sees everything is more blessed than cursed, which is like I don't think that would be so memorable unless he really did like say it that much. But I'm kind of a stickler for certain phrases, like with having come up with a few myself that I won't share because they seem to feel and mean more to me than because they aren't shared as much. It's just like a little weird to incept like certain things like that that are so like blocked up without explaining like a lot. And Clem, for me to take and repeat this phrase to like other people, like seriously, it would be better if like some people were like saw a situation and then someone says the man who sees everything is more blessed than cursed instead of just like using it as like a jumping off point. But it is the formula of how people present those phrases, though, I suppose, without everyone like misconstruing like the meaning completely and like having to be there like defending it and like stopping like misconceptions about it. I mean, while we're speculating about Clem, the real Clem that Cassian took the name from for the Aldani job, he's also the same guy that needed that blaster. So it's not like he was only the quiet observer. He had a blaster too that Clem or Cassian brandishes whenever for the next scene that he's in. Again, like I can't recall a time that he fires it, Cassian even, but even if it's just like for the added effect of having the blaster, even even though it's like kind of like for the audience, like at the very first episode, he doesn't even like pull it out. If it's really just for him to have to threaten people, it's like not a part of his like first meeting for the audience to see. I think he has it out with Luthen, but he always just about uh needs to fire it, and then he like finds another like reason instead of like opportunity to do something else. Kind of like going on the youthful determination thing. They're like right there if they really want to like drop like the uh determination that's brought them there, but and resort to like anything and everything else that they're unaware of or not used to. But it's like, oh, well, why would I resort to something so unfamiliar to get something done I need to get done? Which at least frames like the ISB kind of like weird, like scientists like trying to like discovering new things and new innovations, but it's like you guys are like trying to like swim in the rain and have that count. Not knocking on like actual like scientists or like engineers, but it kind of seems like they're more on value than how things work. Because next thing we know, the our spy from Mon Mothma's side of the world is reporting to the other. ISB officer that was arguing with Daedra a few episodes ago. It's a little like, well, yeah, because he was being relevant to the story, but we find out more plugins about why all these characters were key characters to the plot, and they speculate like I did earlier, but the other officers are trying to get his attention to go to what happened to Anto Krieger. He overhears the person trying to get him to go to the meeting, but it's almost as if it was like kind of normal. So it's like, oh, like I wonder who else are they monitoring. I don't know if it's straight up spying, but how that guy's just doing it is definitely spying, not like monitoring certain senators or whoever. And we finally find out what that guy's been trying to like tease out of like this whole situation so he could pounce on it, because it's like definitely not something only Daedra was doing at the beginning, but it's just more apparent then. It's like, yeah, the glory from the purpose that they gave themselves or have. Even if it's just like a, I wanted that big thing, it's like, oh, that's why I do this kind of moment. But man, does it kind of feel like sleazy, doesn't it? And then we get to the small part before the whole march for Marva's placement of her brick. And really, it's just kind of like the ISB people being like normal or doing normal stuff. They're like, Daedra's like hanging out with people pretty much, while Cyril's like trying to like bond a little bit before they actually get to Ferrix with the Scottish sounding guy. They trade hats for some reason. It almost looks like they need like all this like turmoil for some reason to like chill out, but then it's only like this small moment, and they're like kind of like filling the room with difficulties. While it shows like on Cassian's side with the rebels and the people against uh the ISB and Ferrix, they're all like reflecting or like lost in thought. But eventually there's a big march, and the ISB tried to limit it to 30 people, but it's pretty much everyone in Ferrix. And then B uh, plays the hollow message Marva recorded for her funeral march. And because they like broke the little like permit of 30 people, they try to show the people of Ferrix force by sending all their troops to them, but they pretty much just gave them a face to the concept of why they're like struggling and bad things are happening, instead of just like them being like, oh no, like maybe we should break this up. They're like, oh, like there they are. In the final part of Marva's last words, which were very moving for the situation and a funeral, where the two fight the Empire, and everything comes into play and against each other when those words are spoken. And almost because like they were already had it like going in the other episodes when it was more exciting, Cassian comes in and saves Bix, which was cool. Like obviously, like I want her to be saved, but it's just not what had my attention from this whole episode. But it's kind of like safe for Bix's character, because then it's like, oh, like there's not like everyone's like focused on her. It's like, oh, something dramatic's got to happen because nothing dramatic or action wise to the story is happening. Like no one's like in their prime of being a certain character, and they like take them away because they need everyone to feel the stakes or feel a story happening. But after the fight the Empire thing, there's only like a few like casualties, it looks like, on either side, and there's like more of a riot that the ISB really can't like do anything about, and it's kind of smoky too. Just for the benefit of the story, it kind of looks like it was kind of like a bunch of lucky shots that got a few of the citizens of Ferrix. The guy that answers and tells Cassian about Marva is taken down, or the messenger, you could say. So that definitely happened. That phrase, kind of thinking back to it, like any of the messengers, kind of like get, you know, offed. It's like this little like tucked away like story comedy or story irony if you're like really into all that. Or in short, you could just say it's like a very serious joke or a stoic person's joke, where if they delivered a message, they went ahead and killed the messenger. It's like, I didn't do anything, man. Like, I'm just delivering you the message. I didn't make it happen. And maybe combined with the uh, popular phrase of, I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, further in for like character like motivation and development within the storyline, which for me makes it more like real. And then we get those like finally like titillating moments with Daedra and Cyril whenever it looked like it was almost impossible to like spike their like interests even, much less than a grander, greater excitement from whatever it is their goal was. It was kind of like their version of it was like, oh ma'am, you dropped your whatever. It's like here it is, but Cyril like stuck her up to save her, and she's just like, I should thank you, but after almost striking him with a very heavy object, it's like I think that passes the first move. Maybe like they just went ahead and like he did, like part of like a romance thing, and they're like knocking stuff over later, and they like just don't show it. But the now recognizable faces, including Brasso and the kid that had the space pipe bomb, and the few the or the one lady from the Daughter of Ferrix get gathered up with along with Bix, and Cassian sees them off, and eventually he gets to Luthen and his ship and commits to the rebels and the whole against the Empire thing. And then Luthen's smile ends the whole episode with us having to reflect about everything. And I almost forgot to mention Mon Mothma's like very short part with her daughter gets to meet the banker's son for a most likely betrothal. That's why she's like kind of like against it, but she has to let it happen. At least according to her normal customs, they usually end up getting married after something like that happens. For her parental climax thing, but it being a struggle and ending up pretty badly. But I guess she's like on the Empire side, so that's kind of like what's really happening to everyone on Team Empire. But all of this already has me going, like, this all would be like a very crazy experience. Obviously for Cassian, but for any one person to just break normal and go to be in the rebellion. We have the face of the march, Ferrix, and the interrogation victim, the person that made it the most severe with the explosion, and then just the people already in charge in Ferrix, which was a daughter of Ferrix, which really was the worst one because it's like, you guys came here, you could just leave, but the daughter of Ferrix people were always a target, apparently, just because people would go to them or listen to them. I mean, even if you're just going on the turnout from the ceremony, it's a pretty good like lead to the people there being like, oh, like this is pretty big. Like people might not even know Cassian, but it's like, oh well, they associated Marva to him, and now along with Brasso, and I'm not sure if that many people saw who threw the thing, but again, the Empire stopped and like pointed at the kid. I hope he has a bigger part, or at least is like there. So it will have that effect where it's like, oh, you're just gonna arrest everybody, and I think they eventually kind of do in like certain like Star Wars things where they just can like have a whole planet to like where they like can't do much. And there's the whole Death Star thing where they like blow up Alderaan. But that's pretty much my like 735 on that. Like more than 2 cents, but you know. But yeah, that was episode 12 of Andor. We'll do a whole season overview at least before another season shows up. And eventually we'll probably do Rogue One as a review on the podcast. I had more to say about Andor though, so I started with Andor. But even if you were not aware, I was bouncing off some ideas off you, all of you out there, and it was very much appreciated. So, this was Sleep Atomic, and I'm Alistair. And if no one's told you yet, you look good, and it shows.